Okay, so I'm actually going to have in this life stories edition. I've got someone I've known for a long time. Goodness, you want more to say a generation, Shola, and he's got a very interesting story, very interesting background. So it'll be really good to just get him on board. No idea where this is going to go to, but I guess once I bring him in, we'll see where this story goes. But yeah, so well, welcome. As before you joined in, I did I was just giving an introduction. I've known you for almost a generation, of probably a generation.
Yes.
But one of the things that has fascinated me knowing you is you seem to always be, I wouldn't say against the grain, but you always seem to be a step different than what is normal in society. You know, reading
Mm.
Mad magazine back in the 80s in Nigeria, where even people around the world weren't really into that, and so I guess it'd be good just to, and I know now you've got a lot of interest within the mental health service, and you've seen quite a lot of society in different areas. But like in any show, it's always good to start going back to the beginning,
Mm.
because I'm sure a lot of your upbringing and a lot of what you've experienced in life has sort of shaped who you are now. So if you were to go back to the early days, we I knew you were born here in the UK, but yeah, what part and how was the transition?
Um, it's true that where you come from does shape you. My parents were caught in the trend back in the 70s when West Africans used to come to the UK to get an education because those times the economy wasn't as as bad as it is now. Even though the infrastructure wasn't there, the
Mm.
countries were completely different from what we have now. So immigrants at that time, especially from West Africa, would come to England only for the sake of getting a university education, not really to work. It wasn't really an economic. Obviously, some people wanted the experience, and my parents got caught in that trend where they would go and study all their lives, between jobs and everything else, and then they would have to give up their kids for that duration, and then send them off to foster care. So there's actually a recent article about it, about especially in the Essex area, we had a lot of West Africans have white families bring up their children while they went, full force for their education, doing two courses at the same time and everything else. So they didn't have time to bring up their kids. So we were caught in that, and it's a huge advantage, I have to say. I had lovely foster parents, and I'm still in touch with them now.
Mm.
And this is the 70s, so you can imagine there's a lot of racism at the time, a lot of ignorance. But it's weird how some families just, carried on and everything. So it did expose me to quite a lot. So I had the full English upbringing for about 5 to 6 years before my parents finished their studies, did a bit of work, and then transferred the whole family back to Nigeria, which also happens, which is similar to yours as well. So
Yeah.
we are kids of merchant navy professionals, and we tend to spend a lot of time. We grew up together in different company homes, and that exposure, which is very strange because you don't think about it at the time, but my interests are shaped by being exposed to several things, if that makes any sense. So my parents, first of all, TV was not encouraged. My parents were, well, especially my father. He's one of those academics who his life was penguin books. So I do remember it was all about read your books. And I grew up on James Hadley Chase,
Oh
Harold
yeah,
Robbins.
yeah, yeah.
That was a huge influence on either the gifts I have now or my take on life, if that makes any sense. I really, really got into books because we were the nerdy types in school. So coming to Nigeria for the first time, I'm going to primary, secondary school. We used to be bullied, and I wear glasses. I used to be really kicked around, and so we had our set of nerds that we used to read books all the time, head down, and everything else. But it's a huge, huge advantage because not only does it allow you to recognize your own skills, it's
Mm.
actually educating you on the power of writing, so to speak. And this was the same thing with my brothers. I took a lot off them. At the time, like I said, at the time, you wouldn't know. So
Yeah.
I have a late brother who died when he was 22, 23, very early. He drowned in a beach in Lagos.
Yeah.
But it's funny how at the time, this is very strange, I didn't appreciate him. I knew he had a lot of talent, but we had a bit of sibling rivalry, and I remember he used to bully me a bit. But my God, when I think about what I'm doing now, how he has influenced me is unreal.
Yeah.
He was an exceptional writer, exceptional storyteller. He used to have his own characters, comics, and his imagination was out of this world. Marvel, DC, we used to do our own comics with the writing. His artwork, his illustration talent was amazing. And I remember my parents discouraging him to the point where he would get smacked if they found him drawing comics, and they would say, yeah, but it's not going to put food on the table and all that kind of stuff. And it's a shame because we had a few people like us, because he used to hang out with some friends. They used to even invent their own board games. I mean, that's how advanced they were. You know, I remember things like Subitio that we used to have, the table soccer. My brothers were doing, you have that now on video games now, Team Manager, where you're managing a virtual football sport. We were doing that in the 80s already. We were doing all that. So it's strange how I feel that we should have a sort of community where all these people with these skills or talents should be encouraged.
But
go on.
Because I mean, you started off by saying that your folks came with an idea to the UK to study, and it put you in a foster home. Now, I think if anyone hears about foster homes now, it has a sort of a negative connotation, because it means that your parents couldn't take care of you, and either the social services are finding a place for you and they're putting you in a foster care. You've painted foster care back in the 70s in a very different light, and I know you've gone on to share how much that support has really helped you. But we didn't want to skip over that, because I said now that it has a very different light. But how much of that do you remember growing up as a and even thinking, what, my parents have abandoned us and thrown us here to
it's really weird, because actually I didn't know I was fostered till I was 19.
Okay.
It's crazy now. I didn't even know. It's different from now. This was voluntary fostering. It was a thing that was going on. So you would choose a family, and then I think the council would pay them some funds. You would have to pay them some funds. They're taking care of your kids, but it's voluntary. It's not Section 20. It's not anything like that. So they had a relationship with my parents before we were taken there. And it never occurred to me that, because they used to so they had 3 kids as well. And we used to call each other brothers and everything else. I used to always wonder, what kind of weird family am I in? So I got my real mom and dad, but and I really, really loved them. We're really tight. They were in Salvation Army, and they brought us into the fold and everything else. And here's the thing that's really nice. When I found out I was fostered, I decided to stay in, because I'm back here in England, and to be honest, I've had years where I didn't really contact them. I've been very busy, a bit silly. But after a while, as you get older, you get more responsible. I think, hang on, these people are my family. So we got together again and talk every day now and everything else. It's really nice. And then the nice part of it is that they would tell me things that I didn't know. Because remember, I'm 5 years old, I'm 6 years old. I wouldn't remember. I said, oh, do you remember the time when you thought we were going to kick you out? And we would play the trick on you, and we put you in the garden, and you were screaming and crying. And then when your mom came to come and take you, you were kicking and screaming, and the neighbors had to come out. I didn't even know. So, there's this kind of influence that they had there where they really taught us kindness. I think I became one of those people where when I face racism, I actually don't know someone who's being racist to me. It's really strange. So there are those influences, without a doubt. But yes, it is different from the way fostering is stigmatized nowadays, because I'm in the care business myself, and unfortunately, it appears that 50% of the fostering cases are all due to negative parenting, lack of skills, Section 20. Maybe the young person has got some maybe ADHD or some other mental issues where the parents just felt, oh, I can't be done with this, and then they end up in foster homes, or they end up in semi-independent units.
Yeah, but then you describe at one point very boundary parents, and I'll call them boundaries, where that it's like no, read your books, no sports, nothing that doesn't bring money, nothing that brings shame to the family, kind of thing. And then you moved to Nigeria. I mean, what was the transition like then? Did you feel?
I'll tell you one thing that's quite amazing, actually. When my parents were here, and I remember, I think I was about 4 years old, if I can recall, I noticed my dad, in particular, was more interactive with us. I can recall, because my memories of him is a bit, it's like, oh my God, I didn't really enjoy my childhood. No interaction. The only idea of love is we will pay for everything, but you will not be getting hugs and kisses from us. It's just the way. But I can recall when we were living in England, there was some interaction. I remember dancing in the living room, and Dad would go and get this. Do you remember this song, Kung Fu Fighting, Carl Douglas?
Yeah.
And then if we behave, he'll put it on the 8-track. And then we had the old Mercedes, the 200. And I remember I would throw the 8-track in there, and then we start dancing. And, I remember there was something. It wasn't all that bad, but as soon as we got, because Dad being in the Merchant Navy, when we came to Nigeria for the first time, it was all on ship. And I remember in our cabin, when he came on board, because he'd already come to Nigeria, and he came to our cabin, even his voice was different.
Wow.
That was the first time I noticed that he had an accent. Even his voice was different. And the interactivity was, I wouldn't say cold, but it wasn't like when we were here. There was no animation, there was no jokey. And from there, it just went different. When we got into Lagos, joined him in the house, the interaction was so, everything was read your books and you're not going to get on in, like, it was awful, awful transitions. But you get used to it after a while. And then you do realize that actually they love you in their own weird way.
I mean, so are you saying that you can realize that then, or you're reflecting on it now? I mean, back then, did you realize?
While I'm speaking to you now, I'm just recalling, I'm just thinking, hang on, so this is what that meant, And so it is a difficult transition, because I remember there was a time when I didn't want to go back to them, when we were still being fostered. And Auntie Mary, my foster mom, I remember her saying, oh, Charlotte, do you remember the time? There was a time your mom came to come and take her, and she was scared that we were loving you too much, so she better come and take her kids. But meanwhile, I wasn't getting that love and attention when I was with my biological family. Does that make sense? They've got your back. And I think there's a cultural difference. So what happens with the Nigerian families? They will pay for everything. Even if you're an adult, they will pay for everything that you need. But they will not be hugging you or kissing you. It's a weird kind of love.
I mean, knowing that, and you go back home, move to Nigeria, and you notice that change. Did you guys say anything? You just kind of like, well, this is just how Dad is?
No, I think that was the beginning of the relationship, whereby we were afraid to say. It's really sad, because there's so many things I would say now had I known that he wasn't going to gobble me up. So each week towards the end of the first year being in Nigeria, the fear was there. Scared to talk to your parents, scared to be open with them. It was a huge change, I just knew them as my parents. There was no affection, there was no happy birthday, no Merry Christmas. They ain't got time for that. My parents
was that both mom and dad, or just mainly your dad? Or was it
I think that's a strange one, actually, because I can't see why two of them were like that. Okay, first of all, my dad was a workaholic anyway. So when he's at home, he's not at home. His briefcase is there. I remember he used to have the walkie-talkie. It was an ocean traffic control. I remember at the time. He didn't even want to listen to my mom. It was just about work. 1 o'clock in the morning, you're on the walkie-talkie. I remember. But so that was a little bit of an excuse. But my mom, strangely enough, I think her idea of interaction was, my mom always wanted to be a teacher. So she would teach us. We were the guinea pigs. And we would do maths. I remember I used to be crying in her bedroom. She said, put me on the stool. Right, so this is how you add this one. I said, I've got it. Do you understand that my throat will be, I'll be standing up for, I remember it was awful. That's her own interaction. Education. So as far as she's concerned, she's interacting with her kids in her own way, if that makes any sense. Another reason why I hated maths, by the way, So it is a strange thing now. I mean, my dad's late now. My mom's the only one left. And I did bring these things up recently. I said, why did you bring us up that way? Didn't you see what's wrong? And what my mom said was, because my mom comes from a polygamous family. Yeah. So my dad had 4 wives and concubines, and as far as they're concerned, children are, resources.
Yeah.
So I said, why did you allow us to have such a horrible childhood? And my mom said, that is what we knew. That was her answer. So
And you're right. I mean, and you know, in reflecting back, I mean, and at no point do we look back at our parents and criticize them, because my set of parents also came from polygamous families, and you know, my grandfathers had, you know, 4 to 7 wives and, you know, multiple kids, and so they then are coming into a new culture in the UK and having to quickly learn and adapt, and then they go back to Nigeria, and then it's almost like what you say, they're finding their feet and stuff. But I think more so for you guys, I mean, as I said, I've known you for almost 40 years. Yeah. So we're looking back at, and so I did notice that, you know, there was, you know, I think because we were a little bit older when we came back, and my parents were there, so there was a sort of a difference in how we reacted to our folks. Then I noticed you know, after, you know, coming back and adjusting to school, how did you then see, you know, how much of the UK did you keep with you, or you know?
Good question. Now, I'm the youngest out of 3, so my UK influence, obviously I spent less years here. My UK influence is not on the surface. So my sense of humor, my taste for things might be British, but it's under the surface, unlike my older brothers. My eldest brother is more, he had a sort of a funny accent because it was half Nigerian, but the British accent was there. But unlike me, who spent most of my time in Nigeria, so I fully, even though I'm British in some aspects, I came up full Nigerian person. You would never even know I was born there, you know. And I really wanted to get, because I remember when we first came to Nigeria, I had this kind of Essex accent, and they used to beat the crap out of us in school. If you got a British accent, they would pick on you because they used to see us as puny. You know, we don't have strength. We used to call it ajebota. So we're all, you know, we've had a good life. So we're not, you know, they used to beat me every day in secondary school, I remember. So I remember trying my best. So I was speaking pidgin English deliberately. So I was trying to become more Nigerian than the average Nigerian, if that makes any sense. So that's the difference between me and my brothers. So my brothers, obviously being older when we all left, there's much more of a UK influence on them, if that makes any sense. My brother can't speak Nigerian languages at all. You can understand it when you say. I could even speak my hometown language, you know, kind of, you know. So there is that difference there, of course.
Then how did you get gravitated? Because as I said, knowing, and I started off by introducing, I used to, you know, Mad Magazine, which at the time I found fascinating. You know, you're watching 40 Towers in Nigeria, you know, the fact that it was there. So there was a sense that one of the things I knew about you, you know, when I moved to Nigeria, was that there was something different. Because even when I was in the UK, I wouldn't be watching 40 Towers. I wasn't watching that type of humor. But, you know, there was a you even introduced me to Spielberg. So, I mean, it was quite, you know, actually you helped me to identify a director, because before I just watch a movie but not know that one person has done all this and the link. But so there was a sort of a keen eye in how you saw life and how you saw things. But then you started to look at sort of very different sort of things that were not very common in Nigeria, because Nigeria was very rich in culture. A lot of Nigerian programs were really popular. So we weren't, as it is now, heavily influenced by the West. But I was just wondering how you were able to say, you know, actually I want to go against the grains, find these sort of little nuggets, and really be enriched by them.
I think that was clearly from my late brother. As I said before, he was if he was alive today, he would probably be in Hollywood or somewhere. He was something else. And I remember, again, because my childhood in my home wasn't really that cheerful, so to speak. So we'll all be in the bedroom, because when dad comes back, we're all scared and we go and stay in the bedroom. And my brother, he used to be the chief storyteller. We just close our eyes and he would come up with some seriously, it was amazing. The stuff from thin air, he will come up with some scenarios and everything else. And he's one of those kind of people that likes to dissect things. So if we're watching a comedy or a movie, he starts to look at the credits. How many cameras did they use? It was weird. And he was 15 at the time. Very detailed. So that obviously influenced me a great deal. He was doing Cars of the Future on his drawing board, and this wheel does this, and it was really weird. We'll watch Star Wars and we'll say, no, that should have had a booster in that part of the rocket. And That's what influenced me. So I became a kind of person where that's why I enjoy documentaries now. I like to know how a film was made, every detail, the cost, location, everything else. And it's, those kind of hobbies kind of shapes your interest. So I definitely got that off my late brother.
I mean, I think a bit, because I'm very similar to that in movies, but also in music. I mean, listening to a song, I could say, okay, I can hear, okay, that sounds like another Babyface joint, even before the first words. I can, I can see Teddy Riley's snare drums and that. So, I would obviously say that I was influenced by you guys because of how you weren't. I could watch a movie and it's whether it's an Indiana Jones or whether it's Jaws. I mean, I think Jaws was one of the things that you guys got me into.
Oh yeah.
But then it's like, well, let's look at the guy behind the film. And it almost like starting to appreciate people who are making that and understanding that. And I think so many of us will consume stuff, but would just not really notice any patterns or stuff like that. And I guess we were consuming films very differently to how we do novels.
Exactly. It's the beauty of, I think we will be the type of people that will be watching the making of, for me. Sometimes even more entertaining than actually watching the film itself. Again, another reason being, when my brother was alive, he used to buy, there's a magazine he used to buy. All his mates were reading things like Power Mike and Spider-Man. My brother was reading Cinematographer at 16, 17.
Wow.
Really weird. So at the time, like I said, at the time, you just thought, yeah, my brother's really, but he doesn't dwell on you that this is the making of a genius, actually. Because the way he would dissect a movie or a program, even the humor. I'll give you an example. Fawlty Towers, in Nigeria, no, Fawlty Towers even let's go deeper. Yes, Prime Minister. Yes, Minister.
Yes, Minister.
It's the last place you should be showing that kind of program. They won't. Most of the people in the UK don't even get it anyway. Never mind doing it in a West African country. But we used to talk about, also after watching the program, we'll talk about the detail behind it and why that particular line was funny or how it could have improved. And then went on to Fawlty Towers. And it used to annoy me, the fact that I used to enjoy it so much and the people around me didn't get it. I used to look for people. That's why I brought it on to you. I used to look for people that would get, I used to enjoy it so much. And one particular line, I would rewind it again and again and again because the delivery was brilliant. Same thing with Rising Down.
Same time.
So we'd have a little hub, because we did have another friend who liked that kind of thing. So we'd have a little community of people who appreciate British humor or particular movies. Another good example was Glengarry Glen Ross, which is a very, very good example. It's not there was no commercial success. However, it's one of the best movies ever. All in one room, about some salesmen, all the best actors, but they were not doing it for money. It was like a project. And again, commercially, it wasn't a huge success, but it is probably one of the best movies ever. Jack Lemmon's delivery, Al Pacino, Ed Harris. It wasn't one of those kind of movies where they're there because of name. They actually showed their craft. So our little community appreciated that Glengarry Glen Ross to the point where we even had a Facebook page. So things like that, all that kind of influence brings out, it's like taste. Why do you have a taste? Why would somebody like, a black outfit compared to a blue one? It's all influenced by certain things in your makeup when you were big, when you grew up. So I like my grays because I like being in the middle. So things like that, I guess.
But then, so you're getting this stuff, and obviously, you're in a culture and a society where that isn't the norm. The sort of the kind of humor and comedies and stuff we're watching wasn't, the norm. Did you think, like, well, this would be an interesting hobby to go down, or were you very much, okay, parents have influenced me, I need to be like my dad, need to get a job working in a big company? I mean, or did you even get to dream that, maybe I could be a writer or a producer or whatnot?
We were doing it already because we had our own comics and our own characters. And but in terms of making their career, remember, we don't have career advisors. We don't think like that. We're being fed, we're comfortable, we're going to school. So we're more concentrated on not getting caned at school, never mind thinking of your future. So it wasn't really something I thought that, hang on, I'm quite talented. Why don't I take this further? I did try it when I came back to the UK. I was a bit naive anyway. I had my own version of Mad Magazine. I was very naive, but the writing was actually quite good. And I did try it. So that was my creative days where I didn't care about my career. I just wanted to do this. And they were all good ideas, you know. Even before internet came, we were doing some sort of scrapbook. We had our own Facebook long before Facebook came, but we didn't know how to turn these things into money. And it was never a primary, it was something that we had interest in. I still do now. But as you grow older, you have to think of, all right, I've got to pay the bills. So the creative side of me kind of fizzled out, and more like I'd rather work in a boring job so I can just pay my mortgage, you know, kind of thing. So that was I do regret that happening now, because that's what's happening now. I'm not doing anything creative that I used to before, because my priority is on, I need to pay my bills. I would like to go on holiday and, you know, play it safe rather than be adventurous and creative.
I mean, when you think now back then, I mean, as I said, I know that just before we transition to where you are now and stuff, but I guess, how would you then, when you look back at, say, secondary school, going into university in Nigeria, sort of the higher education part of your life in Nigeria, by this time, you know, your brother had passed and so had your dad. How did you feel, okay, you know, responsibility, I need to settle down, take education seriously, carry on, help? Okay, say not on the head there, no, okay.
I had 4 years of waste. I was so irresponsible. Life was good.
You went to one of the best universities in Ibadan, University of Ibadan, one of the oldest and most prestigious.
I just went there to play. I didn't learn a damn thing. That was awful. I think about it now, I cringe. I got admitted, I did microbiology.
Okay.
I never went, and the funny thing is that it was a nice experience, don't get me, it was lovely, beautiful experience. And I remember, I'm supposed to be a science student. So Faculty of Sciences was where I'm supposed to be. But you see, all the serious university grads would do the science courses. But all the popular guys and, you know, the good-looking girls, they were all in social sciences. So I can remember, in my whole 4 years in that university, I probably attended maybe 30 lectures. You'll find me in social sciences. I didn't learn, I hated the labs. It was boring. The girls were not very good looking. Nah, this is not for me. I would just be hanging out there. So yes, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot of things socially, but I was highly irresponsible, and I wasn't thinking of my career at all. Remember, at that time, the economy was not bad, and even as a British a person of dual nationality, you know, people were thinking of, oh my God, how am I going to go and live abroad? I've got to get away from this country. It never even occurred to us that, we might need to be thinking about coming back to England. There was no plan, because life was good. Never occurred to me that I shouldn't be in sciences. I had no business being in microbiology. But I don't regret it. I had a lovely time. But in terms of what I learned, that was a waste of time.
I mean, you mentioned about coming to the UK, and I do remember you were the first, you know, one summer you were like, mom's, you know, your mum was taking you to the UK, paid for you to go to the UK. And it was almost like, yeah, we spent all our lives here and we're back in Nigeria. But there was always that, because Nigeria wasn't doing too badly. And so there wasn't, you know, things were a little bit more stable. This was, you know, we're talking before 92, 93.
Yeah.
And you were one of the first to leave to you know, and which was always a shock.
Weirdly enough, I didn't plan it. I used to come to England for holidays at the time. So when it's the summer break, I'd come.
No, I'm talking about the first time you did go, because you'd not been to the UK since you returned. So how was that first journey to the UK when, after all these years?
I tell you what, I wish everybody could experience it. The feelings I had, it's really weird. If I felt like, you know, like when you land on another planet, it's like I've never experienced England before. Because remember, you're used to being in Africa. And everywhere looked so, it was amazing, it was fantastic. I went everywhere. I went London Bridge, went to Tower Bridge, everywhere. It's like I've never been here before. Everywhere is so, well, obviously compared to where we're coming from.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is brilliant. Oh, look at everybody's cars, there's no dents on them.
Yeah.
You know, the buses are running, the train station is clean. I was just like somebody who's never been abroad before. It was such an interesting feeling, it really was. And obviously you get used to it again, and then it becomes boring. But when I used to come down there, it was, you know, I did have that experience. And then also the move back here was not planned. I came here on holidays, and at that time, my mom advised me to stay here because the country was going to hell. That was the time where we had, when the military government closed universities down for a record 8 months.
Wow.
She said, you better start looking for another university there. Anyway, you're not serious with your studies over here anyways. I knew I was never going to graduate.
Okay.
So I ended up starting again over here.
And then, so you moved over here culturally now. Then do you then think, okay, new beginning, new lease of life? You know, let me start taking things seriously. Or what was life like then? Did you?
I think I had a bit of a shock to the system when I realized that mom and dad are not going to be paying for me. And I remember my first job was in McDonald's. I couldn't believe me in McDonald's. You know, it was awful. I didn't let my mom know because she would have killed me. Let my son in, you know, all that pride. But I remember when I realized I had to pay my own bills. It was a shock to the system, and I didn't do too good at all at the time. My brother was supporting me. I was staying with him, and even he was telling me, "Listen, this is not Nigeria. You don't stay with your relative forever. You need to go and look for your own place." So I began to get because remember, I come from a home where we're taking care of the whole village. This one's staying with us, and that cousin's staying with us, and we're paying for their schooling. So I didn't get it that you don't stay with people that long. They need their privacy. As far as I'm concerned, I've got a brother here. Everything's good. You know, so little differences, little things. Then I went to stay with my foster parents for holiday one time, I remember, and they were kind of expecting me to pay something towards the rent. And remember, culturally, from where I come from, there's no such thing. We don't need your money. If you've got 2-3 cousins staying in your house, they're staying in your house, you know. So I told my mom, I said, yeah, Shola's working, and yeah, we find it a bit strange, not even contributing anything to it. So I took it very badly. I didn't understand. So they had to explain to me that, no, this is England. Even their kids pay rent. So yeah, little things like that come to you after a while.
Yeah, okay. And I guess, I mean, that's the way interesting with that cultural sort of shift. Yeah. But then you come over here and you then think, okay, the creativity that I've sort of held on to, I couldn't really express in Nigeria. I've come here, I've got an opportunity to expand it, or what was that like?
Yes, and I did try that out because I did do my own magazine, just like mad. Again, a bit naive about how I was going to make money out of it, but I did try it actually. I was heavily into copy editing at the time, and I was lucky I got some freelance work doing that. So I did actually, I'm thinking about it now, even right up to 10 years ago, I did have a sort of internet magazine type thing. Again, being creative. It was actually quite good. The content and the idea was brilliant, but the magazine industry right now at the time was beginning to crumble anyway. So that was my last attempt at doing anything creative in that respect, you know. So I kind of just thought, and my career wasn't going on in the right direction at all. It was a mess. So I decided, you know what, I need to get serious and start doing things that will pay the bills rather than just, I want to explore my creative side. I began to lose the faith in it as I got older.
But then also though, I mean, the type of humor and satire that you had is very similar to Private Eye, so it's not very mainstream. So you have a small market. So even think of Mad. I mean, most people, if I asked, do you know Mad magazine in the US, they probably say not really. So like a George Carling or Bill Maher, there's a smaller, they're not widespread. So you were thinking of following your passion, but not thinking, okay, this is what I like to do, but is there a general market for this?
Also, I think I had this issue where I didn't understand the talents I had. I didn't understand them. At one point, because when I was in university in Nigeria, we would be the chief hecklers when we have a show. And I realized, because I was a very shy person, I realized I actually had a mouth on me. And I was quite funny, actually. I could have been a comedian. But again, you don't pursue these things. A few people would tell you, say, oh my God, I love your sarcasm. I wrote the book on sarcasm. But again, this is an influence on all the things that you... So again, my sarcasm is there because I was a huge fan of 40 Towers. And writing them. So you see how it affects you. So you begin to use these things that you've been interested in your daily life, and people begin to take notice. It's really strange how that works. But I think my mine wasn't defined. I think it leaned more on writing and just putting stuff together, because I didn't have illustration skills like my late brother, but I did have writing skills, and some of the stuff was, it was pretty good. But I just did that mostly because I wanted to do it. I didn't think about how I was going to, make a career out of it.
I think so. Looking at that, so when we look back at how Nigeria has sort of transformed over the last 20 plus years, I mean, I think it's a very unrecognizable from when we were growing up there, from the experience you had, because as you said, most of our parents came to the UK. There was no intent to stay here because the economy back in Nigeria was much better, the standard of living was much better, that everything was in a better place, weather and everything. Fast forward, the military comes in, it almost wrecks a prosperous nation overnight. And to a point, it's unrecognizable now. When you reflect back at where the country is now, do you look back and see where the country is now? Do you have views and ideas, or do you just say look forward and say, that's, I left Nigeria, that's the back of me, I don't have any views of what's going on?
I actually have bitter views because I know what the problem is, and the solution, unfortunately, is not there. I think culturally, we as a people, Nigerians especially, we're not going to change. We have a strange culture where people who are corrupt are revered. Even the poor man on the street doesn't even think and say, hang on, I'm poor because of these people, suffering because of these people. They worship them. It's a cultural thing. It's like the first experience I had going to a Nigerian party, and they were spraying people dancing on the dance floor with money. And my tribe, Yoruba, where I come from, that's what they live for. It's really weird. And I've seen that the problem is not just the government. The people themselves are, I'm really sorry to say, the people themselves, they need a huge overhaul in, what interests them or what their goals are. It's really bad. And unfortunately, I just don't see any solution. I will not be changing anytime soon. It's just a sad situation. So I always comment. So I'll be on Facebook or any of the social media, and I have a personal view. I've seen some things that, remember, I still have the Britishness inside me. So when I was living in Nigeria, the stuff I would witness, I could not believe this happens in the country. So it's more like I am patriotic still, despite my misgivings of Nigeria, and it burns me. So when I'm making a comment, I'm doing it out of passion and disbelief, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's pretty much the way I'm definitely connected to the country, even though sometimes I feel like disowning the country and just giving up my citizenship, because it's the people. I think Nigerians have a huge sense of humor. I love the pidgin language, pidgin English, but we as a people, we are really messed up. It's awful. I just like the sense of humor. Maybe the football aspect, I like a bit about that, but there's nothing else I like. I love the food. That's it. That's what, So I was always fully connected to the country.
The country. What about, I mean, when we think of modern politics, now you're here in the UK, and I guess this will lead on to the sort of the business that you're in now. When you think about how the government here, I'm not talking about any particular party, but I guess the way the British political systems are. When you think about the fact that in some cases there's like the NHS is heavily subsidized, and so that everyone can take advantage of, but then maybe 30 years ago that might have worked. In a time like this where the populations have increased, and in your sector, you might see that where fundings are lacking, how much that can affect the people and yourself. So when you look at how Britain is, as I said, not looking at any particular party, what are your reflections and views?
I think I do mine by comparison. So some people may complain about the way things are, and things could have been run better than things. But we have this slight, well, I won't say it's an advantage, but we have this influence that has sort of like affected our views. So as far as I'm concerned, maybe based on comparison, the country has developed in a positive direction as far as I'm concerned. We have our NHS pretty much, I would almost say, best in the world. It really tries to do what it's there for. It really, really gives it a go. And sometimes There are mistakes made and everything else, but the commitment and the investment in it, along with other services, is quite admirable. So, for instance, like the care services, I do know for a fact that the UK and maybe 2 other countries, Norway, and I can't remember the other one, they're the only ones that actually invest that much in children and in childcare. So when I say childcare, I mean the teenagers, the 15 to 18-year-olds, where they give them, they try to give them a new lease of life. Those who come from broken homes or those who are ex-offenders, they spend ridiculous amounts of money for them every week in the business that I'm in. And sometimes I struggle to understand when you know the outcomes are not positive. A lot of these youngsters, they have, unfortunately, they have this idea of, what's the word, entitlement, to the point where it's actually not helping them. But the government or the system will continue to invest in them with the hope that, something would produce positive outcomes. So there's a lot of things in the UK that I still really admire, and I can't believe we're still investing so much hope or resources into them,
But when in your sector where you work now, what are the struggles and challenges that you're facing?
Strange one. Okay, I got into the care services by, I would say, almost by accident, to be honest. But I did realize that on a commercial point of view, as a provider of care, it was highly, highly lucrative. So when I went in there a bit naive, thinking that I could change the world and support these youngsters and everything else. That didn't quite go according to plan, but I realized that there were so many aspects of it that were quite interesting, where you could actually leave your mark and then make an influence on how things are run. So I right now, I don't run a care home. I don't manage a care home or anything else, but I do run an association for care homes. So I'm a bit of a consultant to care homes. And we have an association, a subscription association, whereby we resource those who provide care services and support them, which is going quite well. I get calls every day from different care homes asking for support, how they would do their policies and procedures, how they can do their tenders. It's extremely busy right now. So it's strange how you find yourself doing what you should have been doing ages ago. And I'm 51 now, so sometimes I reflect and I thought, oh my God, God knows where I would have been now if I'm doing what I was doing now.
So when we talk about care homes, are you talking about elderly or are we talking about young offenders?
We're talking about under 18, so primarily 16 to 18-year-olds. This category is for the challenging young people, ex-offenders, the high-risk ones. Very interesting industry, I promise you. No day is the same. It's challenging without a doubt because you're dealing with maybe, and then some of the young people that we are dealing with, they they've had bad parenting or non-existent parenting. So to put them on the right track is a huge challenge. But very interesting. Sometimes we get positive outcomes from it, but it's few and far between. But it does happen sometimes when you're able to turn around a young person's life, get them into education. Again, I bring my Nigerian culture into it, where I'm selling education like it's the best thing ever, and they're looking at me straight. Hang on, again, being culturally different, coming from the background they come from, they see the educated person as the enemy because their parents were that way. So it's a bit of a comedy when you have someone like me talking to them and trying to mentor them into getting a career. They're thinking, what's he on about? Even the parents will complain to me that why am I pushing their kid to go into college? Very strange.
But when you think about your childhood and you mentioned about dad being sort of present but absent and mum being very strict, do you then look at how you, in the midst of that, you were still able to build some sense of resilience? And then when you look at these young kids that you're working with now, do you think, if they had what you had, how do you think they would have managed?
To be fair, and that's what I always have to remind myself, I came from a very comfortable home. Even though I didn't enjoy my childhood, in terms of career or progression, I had it all. I have no excuse not to succeed. They don't have that. So I have to keep it, even when they're rude to staff and they're off and they're smashing up the place, you're doing everything for them. Yeah, I always have to remind them, sometimes it's not their fault. In fact, most of the time it's not their fault. But what we try to do, what I struggle to condone is when they can't use their own sense to say, hang on, I know I don't have respect where I come from, but these guys are doing everything for me. You know, just be polite and receive the service. So sometimes I struggle with that, but I do understand it's different for them. It's completely different. Some of them never even knew their parents. Some of them have been in care for all their life, so they've got this anger inside them already. So sometimes when they're smashing up the place, someone like me will be thinking, what is wrong with you? You're smashing up the TV that we bought for you to use. So tomorrow you're not going to have a TV there, you know, but you got to remember where they're coming from. You know, what they've been exposed to. They're not going to see things like you see them. And you're saying, hang on. So when you get to 18, 19, 20, what are you going to do? You're not going to college. You're not doing, they're looking at you strange because that's what they know. So those are the things we have to remind ourselves. And that's why we're there in the service anyway, you know, to give a chance to any of these young people who would consider changing the direction their life is going. So even if it's just 1 out of 100, sometimes it could be worth it. At least we know that that is there for them if they want the help and support, you know, steer them in the right direction.
Okay, I mean, we're about finishing, but I think one of the final questions would be, when you look at where you are now, especially with being in the care system for the under 18s, what's your hope and vision for the future with what you're doing?
You want the honest truth?
Yeah.
So what's my hope for the industry, you mean?
Well, especially you in the industry. So I mean, you know, my take is that you're working you're in a career, in a profession now that you're like, you know what, in 10 years time, this is where I'd want things to be, where you are working. So it's not as if after, you know, if you leave next week, then that's that hope and vision disappears. But if you're looking to be there a little bit longer, what would you hope to achieve before you finish, before you decide to call it a day?
So when you say what do I hope to achieve, you mean for myself?
Yeah, for yourself within with the career and the path that you're in right now.
I'll tell you what it would be. I really enjoy consulting with businesses. I love it. I love putting packages together to make them succeed. So Social Care Alliance is a sort of care providers association, which was set up by myself and 2 other care operators. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. I want to be able to resource the care provision, those that offer care services. I want to be able to resource them to the point where they're extremely efficient. They've got systems in place that they can use. You know, that's the legacy I would like to have, so that and my children can take over from there, and then we say, oh yeah, Social Care Alliance did this for the industry and everything else. That's what I can give back, because the industry has been very good to me. And I can see, working with different care homes, where they're lacking. I could see it myself, the problems they face, where these things could have been so much easier. So we would resource them with we do Zoom sessions every 2 weeks. How to do a tender, how to deal with difficult situations in the home, how to manage your staff. It's pretty interesting. It's quite a lot of work to do, but that's what I want to leave behind and say, yeah, we've got this facility now where we can all come to, and then all care home operators, because we don't have that. We don't have a hub, a community. So through Social Care Alliance, we can network and share best practice. That's what I want to just say, yes, we've done something here. That's definitely for me.
Okay.
What I would like to leave behind.
Okay, so our final question is always sort of a fun one. If you were stuck in a lift, or, you know, and they say it'll take about 2.5 hours, 3 hours to get fixed, but while you're in the lift, what movie do you want to watch?
Glenn Ross.
Okay.
Definitely.
So
I'd need the humor if I'm stuck in the lift. So,
okay.
Because that can take me. I probably watched that film more than 20 times. It's ridiculous. Yeah, definitely.
And then song. So if they're about to, okay, we've got the film, about to put it on, but in the meantime, let's play a track for you while we're putting it on. What song would you choose?
So Okay, my taste in music is a bit strange. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. I love Delirium or Enigma. I don't know why. So I want any I just love their music. Delirium or what's this person's name? Yeah, Delirium or Enigma. Anyway, any of the old ones as well. I don't mind.
Give us a song.
Sadness was the one that everybody knows, because this genre for music, new age, is not very commercial. Not everybody's into it, but those who are into it heavily. Mm-hmm. So things like Terra Firma, that's a good one, by Delirium, which is the soundtrack to Tomb Raider. Okay. So it's the kind of music where you just close your eyes and it's deep, you know. Okay. It sounds like cold music, but it's so it's either that, and then I'm a bit into house and garage, definitely for me, without a doubt. Okay. Black Coffee, and big up those ones, you know. So yeah, that's what I would definitely go for.
Well, I mean,
what about you?
Me, as the host, you know, now generally when I thought about, did I ask everyone, all the guests at the end of the stuff, their favorite? It's almost finding out what their favorite song or their favorite movie is, without saying what's your favorite song, what's your favorite movie. So you put them in a situation and you think, if I have to stay there for 3 hours, what would I watch, without thinking about it? And so for me, Schindler's List has always been my movie. The tale of redemption at the end, like this ring could have, it brings a tear every time I even think about it. So I can't even watch it. You know, when you have like Fawlty Towers, I can't watch it too often because I don't want the humor to, it's like you have to sip a little bit and put it away for a couple of years and bring it out. So with Schindler's List, I'd watch it, and then 3 or 4 years I won't watch it again, so I can
Schindler's List of it's the detail of how that was put together, just simply amazing. Every detail. I can see the appeal there, without a doubt.
So that's my favorite. And my favorite song is Lady in My Life by Michael Jackson. It's also another song that I listen to once every 4 years. So that because I don't want to, as they say in Nigeria, rinse it out. So it's it's one of his more emotional songs, but it's just a very telling stuff. So those are, if I had to be stuck somewhere, I was like, give me Schindler's List, bring my song, and those will be my stuff. But again, everyone else to think about what they really, a film that they know that they put it on, it just evokes something in a time when you're of despair. Is always why I always like to ask the question. Yeah, but I have to thank you for giving us this hour, for giving us the time. And as I said, it was interesting journey, interesting introspective of, people might look at your childhood and think, my goodness, how challenging what was it? But then there's so much richness in the midst of it. You describe your relationship with your brothers as if you were in the resistance. We're doing this stuff, but we can't show our parents our superpowers. And you've been left to carry the torch and stuff. So it's I mean, as I said, I was there for a lot part of that stuff. I still remember when you came back from the UK, the first time you went, and you got me this shirt. It's brown. I actually have a picture of my university ID which has the shirt on. And it was prior to this, you took me down to Teddy Show where we used to buy our jeans, our clothes.
I remember. Wow.
Yeah, an exciting day used to be to go down to Sula, to Paris Burger to go eat. And, so
it was really nice, I think as we got older with our parents, I think it's a common thing with the Nigerian families. When you achieve university, you get your admission, everything changes. All of a sudden, they start to give you a lot of freedom. At least, thank God, it's got into a university that we can be proud of.
Yeah.
And the flogging and the caning stopped.
Yeah.
I want to go to England for holiday. They'll give me the money. It was really weird how things changed as they got older.
Yeah.
Really weird.
As I said, and I've been, when I do these interviews and I speak to people from, especially with any Nigerian background, and they reflect on their childhood, and I have to say that yes, our parents were products of their upbringing. So I work in camps. I'm a therapist, and I work with kids and their parents who struggle, and I look at the parents, and I see two parents who had really bad childhoods, and they're coming together, trying to raise this child in the way they think best, and they make mistakes. but I have to be very reflective of, well, that they didn't understand, and so of course naturally a child is just going to be a product of that, and so
Yes.
there's a lot of degree of empathy into that. So even with our parents, it's understand that yes, it was, they tried as much as they thought they did well, and but it's up to us not to keep on take the mistakes, but take some of the positives.
Yes, and we try our best not to. I have this discussion with my mom quite a lot, and I unfortunately some people take it as learned behavior, and like for instance they might be abusing their children physically and too much beatings and everything else and insults because that's what they were exposed to. But I'm proud and I'm happy that there are some of us who I so didn't bring up my children that way at all. I make sure that I'm able to communicate with my daughter continuously. She can tell me anything. I don't think I've ever smacked her before ever. But you obviously you're firm, you know, and you discipline. You always remember they must enjoy their childhood, and I will always support them whatever they wanted to do. I will give them my advice, but no matter what my daughter says, she might wake up tomorrow and I say, you know what, she wants to be a ballet dancer. I don't care. I will support her. I will not do what my parents did, because God knows where I would have been if that influence wasn't that much. Sometimes you're going to let your children take a risk in the creative side, but I'll do a deal with them and say, well, okay, this is the deal. I will support you and everything else, but you are going to university. I don't know what you study there, but you're going, you know, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I appreciate the time and the reflective down memory lane. I know that, you know, we try to focus on a lot of the, on the positive side. I know that, you know, it's been a challenging couple of months for you as a family, but when I look back through, you know, as I said, it's almost 40 years. I mean, I relocated to Nigeria in '82, so that's where I'm getting the 40 years. And you know, as soon as we moved into Point Road, I can remember you coming up with your light blue Ankara and says, "Hey, how you guys? You're new to here." Like, okay, you know, it's been a long time, but you know, throughout the 40 years, you've really been one of the main influences on me. So when people see me doing a lot of things, they're like,
I never knew.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, you know, as I said, from the music, from the film, from that sense of curiosity, the thinking, that sense of looking out, and okay, just you paying attention to detail as much as I can. Now, I had dyslexia, so I struggled academically without knowing it. But the creative side, the vision side, that sense of imagination was something that pushed me on, inspired me. So I always had that. So as I said, it was having somebody like yourself, you know, as a neighbor for all those years, but constantly as a mentor, you know, whether it was Goddy's lesson or the fellowships or whatnot. I mean,
my God, you're not bringing back memories.
Yeah. So. So you know, and took me. I remember taking me to Wallowa's house, and so you know, you led the way. You knew a lot of people. You were very rich and stuff, and so it was good having somebody to look up to listen to, from. And your brother too. You know, Ade used to read Sports Illustrated. You know, like what? Where did you get Sports Illustrated? Talking about the 49ers and away in Nigeria in the 80s. Like, we're not even watching football, English football. You're talking about the 49ers.
It used to be so hard for him to get Sports Illustrated. He'd have to go to some place. There was a recycling place in Lagos Island. Remember, Sports Illustrated has no business being in Nigeria, but it was the.
It's not even here in the UK, so it's not. You don't see it here, so it's not very popular. Yeah,
he had to go to this recycling place. So when he's buying them and he's asking for August edition, they're looking at him, what?
yeah. But also comics, though. Also, my love, you know, all this Marvel stuff. You guys, you and your brother really started it, and I remember, you know, reading it and, you know, reading origin stories and secret wars. So now when I watch films, it's like I used to read the origins. I mean, from Daredevil and stuff. But it was you guys. You know, you guys had this stuff because I couldn't get them or buy them, but you guys always had them, and what comics do for, you know, I was watching a documentary on Stan Lee, and they had George R.R. Martin, who did Game of Thrones, and he said he wrote, you know, he was a comic fan, and he used to be part of the sort of Marvel fanboy club, and he had pictures of him. but he says what reading those comics did, it just gave him that sense of adventure, because he was a nerd in school, and it just said you could be anything and do anything. And for me, having dyslexia without knowing it and being very shy and introvert in school, you guys open a sense of you can explore with your mind and be anything. And so that is sort of kept me going. So, I mean, as I said, it's...
And yes, you did change. You did change. You became this, what's the word? You became this, this is the way I would see you before was, a bit quiet, polite, not very streetwise, Next thing, I'm even scared of you. Hey, your body school did their job. Proper integrated person at that time.
No.
I remember.
Yeah, but as I said, so it's to me, this is really great, always listening and hearing from you and stuff like that. It's been, I still, as a Photo Towers is still on my top list. I watch them every now and then, Doctor Who and all that stuff. So, but you start to think, where does it come from and stuff, and knowing it came down from your brother, and only God knows what Ade would have been, what he would have done. I remember he used to talk about drinking raw eggs when he was trying to do his weight for bodybuilding. I'm thinking, raw eggs, what's he trying to do? So I tried it out too, like, oh, this is a little too much for me, but he was talking about protein, taking as much protein, because he had this little
chest expander.
Chest expander. Yeah.
And then the wheel axle for weights.
Yeah. So I mean, he so well, I'm looking at him thinking, wow, this guy is just on another level kind of thing with his stuff. But you get it, and you give us a little bit of what you were learning from him. And stuff. Wow, this is great stuff. So it's been great. It's been fascinating and stuff. But
32 years ago, I just realized that, oh my God, this is why I'm doing this. It's because of him. That's where I got it from.
Yeah.
It's really weird because you don't know at the time. And I promise you, I'm not joking. I don't even come close to his talent. It's pretty amazing. All that influence.
Yeah. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate everything, and for definitely being a guest on the show as well.
Thank you. It's been therapeutic, actually. Definitely. People should experience this a bit more. I've really enjoyed it because I've suppressed a lot of memories, and it gives you an opportunity to actually think about yourself and what made you. Do you know what I mean? I never thought about it deeply like this, but it's fantastic.
Wow, appreciate it.
So I should be watching Halftime Chat much more.
Yes, please do so. So at least you could just hear stories from around the world and stuff like that.
It's amazing.
All right, my friend.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
All right.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.